This is going to be quick. It's an opportunity to have this. It's not every day that you get ED of Seplat to question and drill them, detail like this on issues that affect capital, that affect the economy, and that affect sustainability. I'll go straight to the first question. The theme of this year's DBNC is Beyond Boundaries. Beyond Boundaries, innovating locally and competing globally. And Seplat epitomizes that. So the question is, what enables Seplat to consistently balance strong local execution with global competitive standards in a complex operating environment like Nigeria and industry like the oil and gas?
All right, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, I have a little bit of a cold and fever, so in case my thoughts are not well articulated, forgive me. So good afternoon again. Thank you, Linda, for giving me the opportunity. I was actually asked to come represent Dr. ABC Ojako in this event today. So thanks. It's always good to see people who try to pull things together and see how we can tell our story as Nigerians. So thank you, Linda. Well done. I understand this is the 6th edition of this event. So that's good. Well done. In Nigeria, if you survive 1 year, 2 years, then you're strong. So thank you. I think for Seplat, if you go back and look at the history of Seplat, so I joined Seplat 2018. I used to work for Shell. I'd done 28 years in Shell before I moved to Seplat. So what's really helped the company is the two founders, Dr. ABC Ojako and Austin Avuru, were already in the oil and gas sector. So they run their own show. Austin was running Platform Petroleum, very successful. Dr. ABC did Shiba, and then they came together to form, and that's how the name was coined. SEP is from Shiba, and then Plat is Platform. So understanding the terrain, putting in a very strong team in place, also managing all the stakeholders, whether it's regulatory or NMPC, which is a very big player in the industry, and setting up processes, tool system, ways of working, culture, governance, and eventually dual listed in Nigeria and London has really helped Seplat to remain in force. So if you look back today, I must tell you that it wasn't that easy at inception. It was quite tough. There are lots of boardroom politics, lots of fights here and there. And that was why they actually went to list. Because the concern is, if you don't list, then you might just end up strangling the company down. That's what made Seplat quite successful. The other thing also to talk about is, when we got the asset from Shell, the very first assets were acquired from Shell. And luckily back then, they also got operatorship. And that makes a whole lot of difference. When you have operatorship, it means you can drive governance, you can drive these systems and policies on your own terms and not on NMPC or other terms.
Okay, I'll just take you up on that quickly. That's actually a bit outside of my questions. Now, operatorship also puts some level of scrutiny on you because, a lot of companies will say, we have interest, but you are not operator, so the pressure is not as much. How have you been able to manage, how has Seplat been able to manage this pressure in order to also step up and be able to, be counted as one of those companies leading the waves today?
I think what the company did very well at inception in 2010 was to also hire a lot of people with experience. So people who have been running oil and gas industry for a long time. And don't forget, the first set of acquisition was from Shell. And that came with a lot of Shell people into the company who had to leave Shell into Seplat. So that provided some bit of continuity in terms of capability, competency, the know-how. Because oil and gas is a technology business. You got to drill wells, acquire seismic data, rigless intervention, build facilities. So that competence knowledge that came with the acquisition was quite instrumental to the sort of success the company then established earlier on.
Thank you, sir. You talked about acquisition of Shell assets, which was like the first asset you managed. Following the acquisition of ExxonMobil Nigerian shallow water assets, how has Seplat reposition itself structurally, strategically, to manage significantly expanded upstream portfolio while maintaining operational efficiency and performance discipline?
Yeah, I think it's a big one. If you go back in time, the transaction started in 2021. Then it got slowed down by regulatory approval. Eventually, we got the approval. So it's just been 1 year now. It's a massive opportunity. Before the ExxonMobil shallow water business, we were just about 500 staff. With the acquisition, we had to take over almost 1,000 people. You can imagine.
Bigger than your existing.
I'm talking about regular staff, 1,000. So we call it actually, it was a reverse actually merger. So just imagine 1,000 people coming to the organization, combined with 500 from a legacy Seplat asset, and over 80 platforms across shallow water. It is massive. I must say it's really is a huge asset with lots of potential. We're still trying to study and understand it. And before then, don't forget, Seplat has never had offshore business before. It was mostly land in Delta State, Edo State, and also Imo State. So this has been really transformational, and it's going to take some time because Exxon never invested in Nigeria for the past 15 years. They were already pissed off with Nigerian government. And if you know Exxon very well, I've worked with Exxon in many JVs with Shell in my days in the US, in Europe, and in also Middle East. It's a very top-down structure, very disciplined, arrogant, but they do deliver. So when they started having problems with the Nigerian government, and they just decided they're going to leave, so they didn't invest for 15 years. So we've inherited an asset that has a lot of issues. Asset integrity is a big issue. There's no investment in all the platforms, fabric maintenance, lots and lots of work. So it also has a huge amount of gas reserves as well, over 12 TCF of gas. So it is still early days, I must say. We're trying to study it. We're trying to create value, but it's going to take some time. But it's a massive opportunity.
Okay.
And like every company, you know, for us as a Nigerian company, Nigeria remains our priority, right? Absolutely. If you work for an Exxon or Shell, it's driven by a global strategy. For example, Exxon has made up its mind that they want to focus on Guyana and the Permian Basin in the US, and that's it. For us, we want to invest in Nigeria. We want to maximize value for Nigeria. We don't want a system where a country so blessed with so much resources is living in energy poverty. We're determined to try to change that.
We still have a couple of questions, and I see Valentine conferring with Linda on my case. So I need to move a bit quickly. As ED, how do you translate Nigeria's vast energy potential into sustained bankable performance within Seplat, particularly in an environment defined by volatility and infrastructure constraint?
So Nigeria will always be a volatile environment. If you say no,
will always be.
It's always, but the beauty about such volatility is you don't have a different kind of investor base who are really keen to play here. I can tell you, if you have a good asset, from my experience working in Seplat, I haven't gone to raise capital in London, in New York. There are a particular kind of investors that will never ever come near to Nigeria. But there are some that are really excited about Nigeria. I mean, the returns here are very good, very attractive, although we know it's challenging. So I think for me it's about just ensuring that your projects are bankable, they are attractive, you're willing to pay high costs of debt, and then the results just follow. For us, that's been the model we've been driving as a company.
Thank you. Okay, so this is not specific to oil and gas, but across Nigeria and energy value chain, we have strong project announcements, big projects, but fewer full-scale outcomes. What fundamentally determines whether a project moves from concept to full-scale impact, and where does the system most often break down?
Yeah, so every project needs to go through several toll gates, stage gates, milestones. First, you start with the concept. What do you want to really do? How much reserves do you have? What's the economics? And how are you going to build the project? You then have to go to the market. You contract out the projects and see whether the number makes sense. You run your economics If it makes sense, then you go ahead with FID. If it doesn't make sense, you recycle. I think for me, what I see is because these projects are really large projects, right? Like the most recent ones, HI, Bongo Southwest, Bongo North, they're all big projects. It takes about 5 years to really go from concept select to first gas or first oil. So it does take time. A lot of time, the fiscals can be a problem, also local content. But I think Baba has been magnanimous these days in giving us a lot of leverage. That's the president, Olatunde Ahmed. Is really attracting investors in and giving concessions that ordinarily in the past you would never have had. And that's why you see a lot of projects now begin to take off. But it takes time. It's not very easy. We're pretty much dormant for like 8 years under the last regime, and that's part of why you see we suffered now. But things are gathering now. Momentum is building up. You begin to see those results in the next 2-3 years.
Okay. Nigeria has abundant gas reserves, and we've actually been touted more as a gas country more than oil country. Yet, we are limited in global competitiveness. What must change operationally and institutionally to convert this resources advantage into true engine for economic repositioning?
Yeah, I think number one, we have to believe in our country. You know, when you look at the investment horizon, when I look at Nigeria today, I see lots of Indians coming to invest here. I see lots of Chinese, lots of Lebanese, and I ask myself, what's going on? Nigerians themselves don't even believe or trust in their country, right? Rather, people want to say all kinds of bad stuff and go abroad, but the ones who actually see the opportunities, we see them as risk and challenges. Just ask yourself, why do you have massive influx of Chinese, massive influx of Indians? And you can go on and see what they're doing. Sterling Global, Indorama. I deal with a lot of these companies because they buy gas from us in Seplat. So I think we first need to rethink our mindsets and know that development takes time, right? And I don't think politicians can actually transform the countries. You need real business people to transform the countries. Because a politician has got just 4 years. 4 years you can't really do much. So once Nigerians start taking the destiny into their hands, and you look at this kind of investment today, companies like Dangote is making, that's what's been missing all these years. In the IOC's days, we just produce oil, ship it abroad, right? We produce gas, put on LNG tankers. They were never interested in the local economy. But now you see Nigerian companies in oil and gas, they're building industrial park, they're into power generation, they're into petrochemicals, fertilizer, urea. That's what's going to transform our economy. Our economy will not transform by just shipping energy abroad. So it's going to take time, but I think we're now on that journey. And if you look at the investment made by these companies, I don't think any multinational will want to invest in Nigeria the way Nigerians are now determined.
We invest in Nigeria. On the global scale, there's a lot about energy transition. And one of the things you will notice is that most of the countries leading this charge on energy transition are actually heavily dependent on what you call the energies that are not so clean. They are heavily dependent on it. However, they are leading the charge for clean energy. So my question is, how should Nigeria prioritize to ensure that this decarbonization ambition does not outpace critical development need to assess energy and industrial growth?
Yeah, I think people just say things about energy transition. Sometimes I'm not sure they really understand what energy transition means. For us in Nigeria, the first thing is about energy affordability. Can we afford? Then after affordability is about security, and last one is environment sustainability. I think our advocacy is very clear now. First, we need to get energy to every household, and it's not about environment. Thank you. So for us, I think the strategy is very clear. We want to get all the oil and gas out of the ground, so that generates a lot of cash for us to now invest in other renewable energy, whether it's solar, whether it's wind, hydro, and all that. But most importantly, we want to produce oil and gas in such a way that the carbon intensity is low. That is what energy transition is about. It's not saying you should stop producing oil or gas, but it says that can you produce in such a way that your carbon intensity is very low. And that means no flaring, no pollution, keep all the gas and oil in pipeline, and then stop displace diesel and coal with gas. And that's a strong point I think we've now come to reality with. With a lot of gas into the market, we're displacing biomass as firewood with a lot of LPG. We're displacing diesel, we're displacing coal. And that for us is a big part of our energy transition. So we'll have to use our oil and gas to get to a level where there's prosperity. And then at some point, we can then begin to pivot to renewable energy. You can look at what happened before Russia invaded Ukraine. The view then was, oil and gas was dead. But as soon as that happened, you saw what happened to the European countries, right? They further doubled down on gas.
Absolutely. Some of them had to reopen their coal.
Yeah. So you can't talk about energy transition with so much poverty. This is still a very poor country. Let's not discuss it. So much poverty, unemployment, social. So we need to first maximize our oil and gas resources to drive prosperity, and then we can then begin to pivot to all kinds of renewable energy. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm completely aligned with you on that. Next question. As Seplat continues to deepen its gas strategy, how are you prioritizing capital allocation to ensure investments deliver both strong commercial returns and tangible impact on Nigeria's power supply and industrial base?
So Seplat is always, as I told you, a Nigerian company. We've always believed in Nigeria. If you look at the power generation today, we actually provide 30% of the gas that lights up Nigeria today as we speak.
Wow, that's a place to clap.
Yeah. So
30%.
Yeah, 30%. If you look at Nigeria power today, Azura, so we provide gas to Azura. You know Azura. Azura is in Edo State. We provide gas to Geregu. As a note that just finished now, we do provide gas in Dorama. So if you put all that together, not just today, way years back when the founders had a vision, they've always believed that Nigeria's got to be powered by gas. So it's very clear that there's still a lot to be done in gas. So for us, from a capital allocation point of view, we normally allocate capital to the upstream business, the midstream business, and also into renewable energy. That's been the model. And we always believe that those three elements need to be connected. So the profit from the upstream business funds the midstream business, and the profit from the midstream business then funds the renewable energy business. That's pretty much how, because the point is for renewable energy, it's still very low returns. You can't compare that with the upstream. And investors, we might speak all the nice grammar we like, but everybody wants higher return on their investment, whether it's renewable energy or it's fossil fuel, it doesn't really matter. So, but we try to balance that in terms of how we allocate capital to the various segments, so we can keep our shareholders happy and investors. Some of you have Seplat shares, right? I'm sure some of you do own Seplat shares. And you can see how we've done so well. We've given you so much money, and I'm sure after the May AGM, you see a lot of dividend coming to your account. But bottom line is, we would like to play in all three segments, both on the fossil fuel side and the low carbon intensity side of the business.
I have two more questions, so we'll try to fit in within the time that we have. Beyond infrastructure build-outs, how do we structurally link energy development, particularly gas, to measurable economic outcome, such as job creation, industrial expansion, and export competitiveness?
Yeah, I think that's the point I raised earlier on. You can build infrastructure, but it means nothing. Okay, you build Coastal Road, or you go to all these states, River States, Akwa Ibom State. Fine, the governors have done well. They build all this infrastructure, bridges, roads. But you need to create employment for people. Just building infrastructure doesn't create employment, right? The biggest problem Africa faces today is employment, because we have a massive population growth. I've traveled to almost all the African countries. I've been to Nairobi, that's in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania. All these countries have massive young population. The median age of the African population is about 19 or 20 years. I don't know if you guys understand that. So infrastructure is good, it opens up access, but investing in manufacturing it's what's going to transform a country. And I think we see that begin to change now, and I hope that we can sustain that. But there's got to be energy, there's got to be security We need a country which people can be assured about getting their return on investment. They need some bit of predictability, security, political stability as well. So for me, that's what's going to drive the change, not just infrastructure.
Absolutely. My last question. If Nigeria is to achieve true power prosperity, what are the 3 decisive shifts that must occur within this decade to reposition energy as the backbone of economic transformation? And this we've limited to 3 so that we can actually have it as take-home.
Okay, I mean, it's a lot, but I'll just try and bucket them. I think number 1 is about political stability and security. That's one key part. Investors don't like to invest where they're not sure about what's going to happen tomorrow. And that's one problem we cannot predict because there's so much uncertainty. So that's my very first one, political stability, security. Second for me is about the regulatory framework. People want to come to invest when they're sure about your regulatory framework, not that that changes all the time. And the third one is about investment. It's investment. No matter what you do, if you can't get investment in your country, then you're just wasting time. Government doesn't have money. It's going to be driven by private sector. Private sector led. If you look at all the major investment today, what's transforming lives, what's lifting people out of poverty, it's private investor-led activities, not government. And I think that's the way I see us. And the potential is enormous in this country. And we've got to begin to think about 10, 20 years. If you look at our population projection, Nigeria the forecast will be about 500 million people by 2050. Are you guys aware of that? 500 million people by 2050.
That's in 24 years.
So imagine the enormous amount of energy that comes with what that population will need. 1 out of 4 babies born every day in the continent is a Nigerian. So sometimes I'm not too sure that the leaders understand where we're headed. And we've got to be prepared for that future. So those are my 3 main focus areas.
Thank you very much. I think those 3 are very well taken. Thank you for this time, and I think it's very impactful. So Valentine.
We have to take questions now, though. And we have time for 3 questions. I like the fact that you guys are being proactive with that secret I shared earlier. So if you don't know, please ask around. But in the meantime, if you have a question, I see one here. Please pass the mic to her. And then I want to diversify. Okay, 2 ladies, 1 guy. Hey. Okay, one after the other. The lady there first. Sorry, I'll come to you. Your name, the question.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tina Oruche. I'm the MD of Trail Energy Nigeria, and I'm for Engineer Effiong. So I listened to you, and I'm very impressed with what Seplat has done. The acquisition is quite impressive. One thing I want to ask is, as someone who runs in the oil and gas sector as well, and even as a business owner, one thing that most organizations suffer is when they acquire another organization, you have to deal with structure, you have to deal with setups, you have to deal with stakeholders. So I want to find out, what is the plan that Seplat has for the existing staff strength that ExxonMobil had? And also, what is your plan for contractors that are already in the system? Do you have some arrangement? Are you trying to get rid of some people, bring in new hands? How do you align the whole plan with Seplat with the existing structure at ExxonMobil? Thank you.
All right. So do I respond or? Yeah, I think it's a very valid point. I always remember when KLM and Air France merged, you see they still kept KLM Air France, right? Yeah. So it's actually almost similar model. You're right in the sense that ExxonMobil ran the shallow water business offshore, and Seplat has always been onshore. So what the company is doing now is to try to see how do you merge. They say take the best of both worlds. Take the best of the Exxon world and the best of the legacy Seplat. And it's quite interesting when you look at the culture of the organization. So we discovered that in the legacy Seplat, people are empowered. They can take decisions because it's a Nigerian-led, Nigerian-run organization. Whereas on the shallow water side of the business, the decisions were almost made by somebody in the US. It's a top-down. So we put these guys in position of power, and they don't really know what to do because the umbilical cord has been cut, and the Igbo guy who takes the decision is gone. So we're almost like in a lacuna that they cannot take decisions. So we're now trying to drive a kind of transformation of how you infuse and say, look, this is now this is a Nigerian company. I'm not waiting on one guy from Wood Creek in the US or, to give instruction. It's quite a very interesting dynamics. But again, like every transition, it takes time. It's change management. And I can see that in the next few years, it will take some bit of time. From a vendor point of view, we've kept all the vendors which we inherited from Exxon. So all vendors with running contract is automatically guaranteed. For contracts that are sort of expired, we're running a new tender process, but all the vendors who have either worked for the old Seplat on the onshore side or the offshore side are all part of that bidding process. So that way, we can ensure continuity. Because oil and gas business is a lot of work is done by contractors, to be honest. Sometimes people say, we just sit and drink coffee and make capital allocation. But we want to make sure that vendors that have demonstrated capacity and have delivered will continue to support our business. So there's a big culture part as well. Offshore is very different from onshore. The offshore part runs like a small cult. You can imagine when you're offshore, you're somewhere. I worked offshore for about 10 years of my career. It's a very different world compared to when you're onshore. But it's how we balance that culture such that you still allow people to still be part of that identity at the same time. Look at corporate areas where you can synergize. Because part of acquisition is also try to drive down costs, synergies, also scale up operational excellence and drive down costs. So that's it. So you're guaranteed about if you're working for us, no problem, don't worry. But you have to compete and you have to be, competitive because we will not award contracts the way Exxon did.
Madam, so you're secure. No fear. All right, so we'll take one question from a gentleman I saw over here. There's a man that's him, over there, sorry. And then we'll come to the lady, yeah? So, and then there's another lady here, so just 1, 2, 3, we're good. Please.
All right, thank you, sir. My name is Effiong Udofia Okon. Currently serving, NIC member, currently serving in Lagos, sir. So you said something earlier, which I used to tell my people around, but I've always been ruled out, always. Probably because we are still in the same level in life, sir. You said something about believe in our country. I used to tell them, believe in our country, Nigeria can still be great again. But I've always been ruled out by, especially from like political factors, especially like inadequate government project. So, sir, Nigeria talks a lot about energy transition, but deep down, this investment heavily benefits oil and gas, sir. So, sir, from Seplat's perspective, is the transition narrative and genuinely actionable or largely aspiration, given the current economic reality, sir?
All right, I'll allow us to take all the questions, if you don't mind, and then we'll answer them collectively. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Please, your name and quick question, all right? So we can cut through every single one. Next.
Thank you, sir. My name is Chidebere Nenji. So my question is regarding the political instability you talked about. I hear you regarding that political instability. It's a conversation that forms a lot of conferences. But my question is there a key regulatory step or process that you think would actually cure that political instability? Because it's something that resonates around a lot of conferences. People keep saying, oh, the key challenge is regulatory instability. What can actually prevent these contracts from getting questioned or getting roadblocked by regime changes? Because next year we're going to have another election. So what are these things that is there something that you can suggest that will prevent political instability from being a key challenge? Because it's something that resonates a lot around energy conferences. Thank you.
Your name and question, please.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Sarah Oyedele. I'm the founder of Avon Signature Joy Avon Enterprise. So my question is, what is Seplat doing in terms of job creation for undergraduate students that universities sent out? Like now, 200 level and 400 level, they send them out now to go and try, what their profession is like. So what is Seplat doing in terms of helping them to gain knowledge for their different courses, please?
Thank you. Next question. I think the last one here. Where's this lady? Yes, quickly.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Juliet, and I'm the CEO of DAT Consulting. So we work in healthcare, and one of the things we do is help organizations maximize workplace productivity via wellness. So I wanted to ask, because recently there has been a lot of conversations around health and wellness. Mine is coming from the employee productivity. So we work in healthcare, like I said. So there's a lot of conversations around health and wellness, but one of the things that is not quite integrated into that conversation is sexual health. Now, World Health Organization said that sexual health is a key driver of stress management and workplace productivity. So my question is, in the corporate space, yours is energy. How do we integrate sexual health and wellness into the overall employee well-being conversation and then implement it? Now, the reason I'm asking that is because people usually push, saying, conversations around sexual health may push professional boundaries or blur professional lines, but that is not true. Research shows the otherwise. Thank you.
It's sexual health.
Thank you. Okay, we'll squeeze in one last question and we're done. Thank you. Please, if you're asking a question, well, we know you're very smart. Yeah. So just your name, question, quickly. Yeah.
Hi.
So don't embellish. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Naza. So, first of all, congratulations on being the first stock on NGX to cross 5 digits. That's incredible. And then my question, do you plan on having your own refinery at some point to boost domestic production, among other things? Thank you.
So we can address all the questions now.
Okay, that's it. All right, thank you very much. This is a very, very, very powerful questions. Thank you so much. So let me start with, I'll probably start with the last one. Refinery. Refinery has always been something that we've looked at extensively at the board level, at strategy level, but the last time we looked at refinery, we were not very comfortable because the sector it was still regulated. But now it's been deregulated, and we're now going back to the drawing board to look at, is this something we want to invest in? Like every company, you need to have a strategy. Your strategy looks out 5 years, 10 years from now, your belief about the future, and that's what now drives how you make your investment decisions. So, yes, we're looking at refinery. We haven't made any investment decision yet. It takes, on the average, 2 years to about 5 years if you want to build a refinery. Refinery also has different kind of complexity, whether it's just a cracking unit like what you have a lot of small 10,000 modular refinery, or you're looking at large-scale refinery like what Dangote is building in Lagos. So we're not there yet, but we're looking at what as an area we'd like to get into. Lots of our new shareholders are beginning to look at energy from an integrated perspective. So not just selling raw material, but feeding the raw material into plants that then churn out product. So let's hope the next few years you see us take investment on refinery, but we haven't yet. And if you look at Dangote refinery, I think it's pretty much, by the time it runs at full capacity, it plans to double 1.4 million barrels per day. That's already a lot for the country. So we haven't taken that decision yet. But we're looking at it closely. Sexual health, I'm a bit confused what sexual health means, really. So I don't say before I don't say what puts me into trouble. When you're in the midst of genders that, I have 4 daughters, and each time I talk, they say, Dad, you're a sexist.
So I may not be able to speak for her, but you're referring to
just explain it to me, yes.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to expatiate.
Okay.
So sexual health is the aspect of health that looks at, of course, physical, mental, emotional well-being from the sexuality standpoint. That's the definition by World Health Organization.
And so you're complicating it.
Okay.
I'm
So,
Okay.
so we are not dictionary definition. No.
Oh, okay,
We're
okay,
saying,
okay.
so when you say sexual health, for instance, my assumption was you meant, you know how
Yes.
at the time of the month,
Yeah.
women, I mean, it'd be nice to
Yeah.
give women
Yeah.
those days as
Yes,
break,
yes.
right? Yeah,
Okay.
they took this. Is that what you mean, or something else?
No, okay, so being healthy either as a man or as a woman, because sexuality is about being male or female, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Okay.
being as a man or as a woman, being
Okay.
healthy. And that includes physical, mental,
Yeah, so maybe
emotional.
like providing materials and tools and education, right?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. Now understand. So what we call occupational health is what you're referring to sexual health. You're right in the sense that in those days in our industry, it was okay to have 10 people die in a year. So we look at fatality as a statistics. But now it's no longer acceptable. We cannot judge ourselves being successful by killing people in the industry. So if you look at our history so far, we've recorded 0 fatality in quite some years now. So we said clearly we have what we call goal 0. Goal 0 means people you go to work and you go back home safely to your family. Whether you work in the office or you work in Lagos or you work in the fields, you must go back home safe and no injury. So it's called goal 0. No LTI, no fatality, no major or minor injuries. And that's what drives our focus on occupational health. Now I understand you. When it's sexual health, I was a bit confused. So it's a key part of our scorecard. In fact, our executive scorecard that drives compensation has set very high targets when it comes to health issues. And that's part of our ESG segment of our corporate scorecard. So we say we will never kill people or injure people. So that's it. So we're really, really committed to, because if you don't have a viable workforce, then your business is dead, right? And so it's huge priority on that. Job creation, internship. So we take a lot of interns every year in the company. If you want to do internship with Seplat, you just apply. You don't need to know anyone. And then we'll review all the application and we'll take, I have personally managed quite a lot of interns in my career, and it's the same thing to all the organizations. So every year, we take a large number of interns. Some come in for 3 months, some do 6 months, some do 1 year. It depends on your program of study in your university and where you're coming from. So that's something we spend a lot of time on. We also do a major campaign on graduate trainees. Our last graduate trainee campaign was in 2025, I think. We had about 50 GTs, and we keep doing the GTs, because the GTs are the way you fit, that's how you build your talent pipeline and your succession plan. So stay tuned, watch the papers for internship for graduate trainees.
I think we have 2 more questions.
2 more, yeah.
Ask about energy transition.
Yeah, and regulatory
stability. Is it a
stability.
buzzword or there is any plan towards actualizing it?
Yeah. So for energy transition, as I did mention, is about driving down your carbon intensity. Let's not fool ourselves. There are a lot of sectors that are difficult to abate the CO2 emission, like steel, cement. Land transportation you can, because you see a lot of EVs nowadays. The Chinese have been shipping out a lot of EVs. So we have EVs that don't have to run on petrol. But there's so many other sectors that still require oil and gas to power the industries, like petrochemical. You still need gas, right? So for us, the way we look at it is to have a balanced portfolio that Nigeria will still have to invest a lot in upstream, midstream, and also begin to invest also in the low carbon intensity segment. So for us, energy transition, yes, but the world still needs a mix of all the energies. We don't see us abandoning any part of the energy food chain.
The last question is from Chidebere.
Political stability.
Can we take that question? Chidebere, we'll give you the opportunity to ask it in person. How does that sound? Sounds good? Yeah? Sir, would you give her that privilege? Because we need to move ahead.
Yeah,
if you don't mind.
Yeah, so the last question is on political instability.
No, yeah, so we want him to address that question in person. So we can take quick photo ops now.
Okay.
So we really, really appreciate your time and appreciate the fact that you've pushed yourself to be here. Thank you. It's not easy.